Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another movie review. Today, I'm taking a look at How to Train Your Dragon, the live-action version from this year. Obviously, this is the remake of the 2010 DreamWorks animated classic. It's going to go down in history as one of their best movies, most likely. And here we have a live-action abomination to grace the silver screen. No, I'm being hyperbolic there, because I didn't hate it. It's because obviously I've seen the movie. Took me a couple weeks, but I finally saw the movie, and I did not hate it, which I'm both okay with and annoyed at the same time. So, previously, the last movie review I did was for another live action remake, which was Lilo and Stitch, which is a movie from my childhood that I adore. I have a large attachment to that movie. How to Train Your Dragon, much the same. Ironically, directed by the two same guys. So they both have two really big movies coming out again this year. So yeah, How to Train Your Dragon, Lilo and Stitch, two big remakes that were coming out this year. I saw Lilo and Stitch, wasn't the biggest fan of it. There were ideas that I was okay with on paper, but I just don't think were necessarily executed well on in terms of the changes that they made to the story. That I just don't think they are executed well on, and like the reason for changing was more what I speculated to be more budgetary rather than actually for improving the story. And so I did say in that review that it's like, hey, you know what? Maybe if this does well, they'll get a sequel and then kind of redeem themselves with a sequel. And well, they're making a sequel. It's already been greenlit, so that was fast. But the path to greenlight for How to Train Your Dragon 2 sequel a little shorter, because they announced a sequel for this film, a live action remake of How to Train Your Dragon 2, in like April, before this movie came out in June. So so no matter how this movie did, I guess there was, a sequel was always guaranteed. Which I find interesting. Obviously, they had a lot of faith in it, and I guess that faith has paid off because this movie's done really well. I do find it, just as an aside, really quick before I do talk about the movie itself, I do find it interesting that so far this year, it seems like the biggest movies of the year, and it's only the beginning of July, so let's hold our horses. We're not out yet, but out of the summer months yet, but so far at least, it does seem that the bigger movies of the year are family movies instead of comic book PG-13 explosion fests like an Avengers or something like that. Which obviously there's nothing wrong with those movies. I love those movies, especially when they're good. uh, but in years past, it's been something like Pirates of the Caribbean or Transformers or Harry Potter or even Star Wars, which nowadays is always PG-13 for some reason. Granted, I suppose when the original movies came out, PG was more PG-13, quote unquote, at that time anyway. So yeah, I do find it interesting that the movies making the big bucks this year are family movies. I think that's actually really nice, even if they are remakes. It's like it almost feels like that to a degree. It kind of feels like there's this middle market of there's this lane that has kind of just been relegated to streaming of family entertainment movies that I feel like the last 5, 6, 7 years, a lot of these type of movies have just ended up straight to Netflix and stuff like that. And so you haven't seen a whole lot of big budget, like actual family movies in theaters. So I kind of almost feel like that maybe audiences gravitating towards these movies instead of like another comic book movie like Thunderbolts, which kind of really didn't do very well, surprisingly, despite how good I thought it was, and a lot of other people thought it was. I wonder if that's kind of maybe a audience response of like, hey, we kind of want some of this type of movie back. It's like it's a solid PG. There's nothing really offensive in it. It's like no one says any dirty words. We don't have to worry about covering kids' ears. It's like the violence isn't too great. It's just good, wholesome family entertainment. So I wonder if, like, in let's say 2 or 3 years, that if there's suddenly a glut of family movies, kind of this vein, where where different studios going, here you go, we're finally responding to that thing that you paid a lot of money for back in 2025. It's 2027 now. So here you go. Which is funny because I think two of those movies that will come out that summer will be How to Train Your Dragon 2 and Lilo and Stitch 2. So, so that's kind of funny. But anyway, so yeah, How to Train Your Dragon. Gosh, so I've already kind of said that I have a big attachment to this movie, the original. I adore the original movie. The original movie is ignoring anything Star Wars from my list. The original movie is in probably my top 5 favorite movies of all time, just period. And of course, when it comes to animated movies, it's impossible for me to choose an actual favorite animated movie. But How to Train Your Dragon is in that rotation of like the top 3 that depending on my mood, I'm constantly flipping through and going, well, it's this one today. Well, no, it's that one today. It's like depending on how I'm feeling. It's like if I'm feeling a little bit more emotional, then it's How to Train Your Dragon. Easy. If I'm feeling a little more comical, it's the Lego Movie. Stuff like that. If I'm feeling kind of more like animated-y, if that makes any sense, then it's Spider-Verse. Which is funny because 2 out of 3 of those movies I just mentioned are Phil Lord and Chris Miller. But anyway, so yeah, How to Train Your Dragon, I have such a emotional connection to that movie. It came out when I was in the 6th or 7th grade, middle school aged, and didn't see it in the theater. I don't think the trailers really did anything to win me over on seeing that in the theater. Megamind actually was the one DreamWorks movie I did see in theaters that year. I'm pretty sure that came out the same year. And How to Train Your Dragon, there was just something about that. I'm kind of like, I'm not really into fantasy. And it's like, this kind of seems predictable and boring, so I won't watch it. But then my dad brought it home when it came on the DVD. He got it from Blockbuster or something, and brought it home. And it's like, hey, let's watch this tonight. I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, I'm not going to say no to watching a movie. So we sat down, we watched it, and we got about halfway through it, and then he stopped. It's like, all right, good stopping place, time for bed. It's like, you guys need to go to school in the morning. I'm like, huh? We can't stop it now. I'm so invested. And part of the reason I was so invested is I saw so much of myself in Hiccup. It's like that character from the starting out as the loner, always picked on outcast that can't seem to do anything right to save his life and has to respond with snappy, witty comebacks. And he eventually rises through the social standing just by being himself, and everyone sees that other side to him that they had been unintentionally neglecting and not able to see, and then he becomes the hero that saved the town. I mean, it's a typical underdog story. It's been done 1,000 times. But the way that they did that in How to Train Your Dragon really hit me at such the right moment, because that was so reflective of my own life at the time in terms of at least my school life. Home life, nothing. My parents were way better than Stoic the Vast. No offense. He tries. He really tries. That's part of the point of the movie. But he's not doing a great job at the beginning. My parents were way better than that. But point being, school, peer group, very much I was Hiccup. I was totally Hiccup. And so having a movie like that, to be able to see a character like myself seeing so much myself in a character like that at that point in time, really hit. So it very quickly became one of my favorites. So when they started doing Riders of Berk on Cartoon Network, of course I started watching that. Then it switched over to Defenders of Berk, and so for the second season, I'm like, of course I watched that. Then the second movie came out, and I was obsessed with that. And then Race to the Edge started on Netflix. So of course I binged the whole first season in a day. Realized that was a huge mistake, because then I had to wait like another 6 months for another 13 episodes to drop, and so I paced myself whenever the next episodes came out. And then of course The Hidden World came out in 2019, and that's one of my longer videos I've done in this style, where I just talk into a microphone, and actually it's not as long as it could have been, because I had to take cry breaks during it because of how good of an ending I thought that last movie was, which apparently nowadays is maybe a controversial opinion, but anyway. So yeah, that's just kind of a general background of my feelings on How to Train Your Dragon. So it's been 6 years or whatever since 2019, since The Hidden World came out. So it's like, so I still have all these fond memories of the movies and the franchise as a whole and the TV shows, and think back on it often. And and like listen to the soundtracks and stuff when I'm doing stuff. So it's not something I've forgotten at all. But I'd kind of made peace with the fact that it was over and done. So when they announced they were doing a live action remake, I kind of had a Steve Carell reaction from The Office where he just starts screaming no a bunch when Toby returns. Like, no, 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 because I have hated these live action remakes from the start. Maybe not from the start, because when the quote unquote what I count as the start was like Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland in like 2010. That I kind of count as the start. That was like when Disney first started these in this current era. That one was so weird and different. Okay, whatever. It's diverting from the quote unquote source material of the original Disney movie and sticking a little closer to Alice Through the Looking Glass, the book. But they're calling it Alice in Wonderland. I can accept this as kind of its own thing, and this is fine to exist like this, I guess. So that one, there's artistic merit there. Even if you're not a fan of Tim Burton. I'm not really a fan of Tim Burton, but it's like, there's some artistic merit there. But then they started doing Cinderella and Aladdin and Dumbo and Peter Pan and Lady and the Tramp, and some of these are only on Disney Plus, like Pinocchio, and it's Jungle Book, and it's Lion King, and it's just no, stop that. These are just they were very quickly became so soulless. Beauty and the Beast, that's the big one that I think is just kind of really soulless. When females out there will probably roast me over the coals for saying that, but Beauty and the Beast, ugh. That's the original movie's amazing, and it's like that's what you turn it into. Blah. So anyway, so yeah, when Universal announced that they were going to copy Disney and turn How to Train Your Dragon into a live action remake, I was not pleased. But because I think they announced it, and then like it took a day or two. It wasn't immediate, or maybe I just didn't see it immediately. But then they announced that Dean Deblois, who I think that's how you pronounce his name. I apologize if that's incorrect. He was writing and directing the live action remake. And it gave me pause because I'm like, hold on a second. So you're telling me half of the duo that made the original movie and the director that then wrote and directed both the sequels and has basically lived this world for the past 15 years or so. He's returning to do it again, but in live action. Okay. I'm now actually interested to see where this goes, and I'm not going to totally write it off as a shallow cash grab. Now, inherently, I still kind of think that's where this movie's origins lie with Universal, where they're just like, I think it's a combination of, we want some of that Disney live-action remake money, and we're pumping a bunch of money into our theme parks, and the Isle of Berk is one of the new areas we're building at our big theme park. So it would be kind of nice to have a movie out around the time the theme park opens. And they could have just greenlit How to Train Your Dragon 4 and made it, and it could have been a Kung Fu Panda 4 situation. Where now I haven't seen it, and that's on my stack of shame. I need to get to Kung Fu Panda 4 because it doesn't seem like it's horrible, but it's just kind of okay, which easily makes it the worst out of all the Kung Fu Panda movies, because the other three are like great, really good. The third one's not as good as the first two, but it's still pretty good. So the fourth one just kind of, it seems like it's just kind of meh. It's like, that's kind of unfortunate. So they could have just greenlit a How to Train Your Dragon 4 and like shoehorned in another story somehow and brought Hiccup and Toothless back together even after we have the emotional ending of The Hidden World and everything. And I guess that's technically what Homecoming is a little bit, but it's like, it doesn't count. It's a Christmas special, half-hour Christmas special for TV. And it happens before the ending of the movie, so I'm fine with it. They could have done that, but no, what they instead did is that they decided to do the live-action remake route. And in the long run, I think that's maybe the smart choice, which I can't believe I'm saying that. Because by doing the live-action remake, you're preserving the integrity of the trilogy and all the other ancillary media, like the shows and stuff. So that because like I said, they could have just greenlit a fourth movie, but they didn't do that. They decided to kind of quote unquote, and it's not even like they're doing a fourth movie that's just rebooting and doing it and like, ooh, this one's going to be closer to the book or something like that. Where it's like Toothless isn't a big Night Fury dragon; he's a tiny one. And he rides on Hiccup's shoulder. Because they could have done that as well, and maybe make it even more kiddish or something like that. But no, they instead decided to live action remake it. And when Dean DeBlois heard they were going to do that and requested to direct it, they said okay. Like, he's never done a live action movie before. He's only ever been an animator. He's only ever directed animated features and stuff like that. So I do actually wonder if they looked at Lucasfilm and saw the kind of rise in popularity that Dave Filoni was getting for coming off of Avatar: The Last Airbender and then Clone Wars and then Rebels, and then it's like, hey, now you're directing the first episode of The Mandalorian, our brand new live action Star Wars show for Disney Plus. Hey, people seem to like that. Now you get to direct more episodes of that. You're a co-producer on everything. Now you're like co-writing the company. Oh, and you can make your Ahsoka live action show. I wonder if they kind of looked at that and went, maybe we could have that too. So they gave him the chance. And I think, and like I said, I think while initially they're making these decisions for the wrong reasons of just, we want money, which granted that's inherently not necessarily the wrong reason. I think the way Disney does it makes it the wrong reason. But I think they look at, okay, let's see what other, because that's the thing as well, is that Universal has only owned DreamWorks for a couple years. So they may not even have owned DreamWorks when The Hidden World came out, or if they did, it was like, that was like the first project that was released under Universal under them, or like the first or second. It was very close in time period. So Universal's never really been able to reap much of the reward from How to Train Your Dragon, but they knew it was a popular IP. So I see them looking at it and going, we let's do something with this other than just theme park. And it's like, so this kind of being quote unquote Universal's How to Train Your Dragon, the live action adaptation of it. If they had to go down this road, I kind of feel like they were making all the right decisions for going down this road. Because the movie was actually, the remake I thought was actually good. Now I prefer the original. Obviously, I'm always going to prefer the original because it's the first. And the new one doesn't do anything that I think actually vastly improves on it. There's like one or two little tweaks. I'm like, okay, that's an interesting little tweak to the story, and I like that. But there's nothing like major that really changes things that makes me go, that was a definite improvement over the original. I'm glad they made this now. But it's still, so I'm always going to prefer the original. But with Dean writing and directing, I think he did a good enough job knowing what the heart of the story was and what beats he really needed to hit to get the heart of the story and not get distracted with making, and this is going to sound weird and hypocritical coming from me, unnecessary changes to the story that detract from the main purpose of the story. Like, say, Lilo and Stitch. But again, I think that was more of a budget thing. Or some of these other Disney live-action remakes. Because if you watched my Lilo and Stitch review, I brought up that I have a big issue with some of the changes made in Aladdin, because some of these changes made in Aladdin are really kind of superficial, and they actually kind of mess up the story a little bit. And they're not really actual big changes when you look at them on the surface. But when you dig deeper, it's like, no, that actually kind of throws off like the whole narrative of the movie. And that's been an issue with a lot of these live action remakes from Disney. So kind of making some of these small changes to How to Train Your Dragon didn't harm the movie, but didn't like I said, didn't necessarily elevate it either. But it was kind of enough of a, oh, okay, I see what you did there. I kind of like that. Key point for me, I think, being Astrid's character, because she's pretty true to her original animated self, where she doesn't like Hiccup because it's mostly she thinks that he's just a goof who's kind of just joking around and not taking anything seriously. There's never really a moment in the original where she overly states that, but you can just kind of tell by her demeanor, and you just kind of understand that that's why she has issues with Hiccup. So when he suddenly gets good in the ring and it's not necessarily that she's even jealous. She thinks that he's like somehow gaming and cheating the system and not taking it seriously, and that's why she's mad. Or at least that's how the way I interpret it. So for the live action version to kind of do the same thing, but at the same time shift it ever so much. Like, it's not necessarily that she thinks he's a goof who doesn't care and is just kind of coasting by and thinks everything is a joke. Because there is that line in the movie. It's like, is everything just a joke to you? So in this version, I do like that they, like I said, it's similar. It's along the same vein, but it's just a little different. She thinks that he's just a spoiled brat with the silver spoon in his mouth. And it's like, okay, it's still really, really similar. It's still really, really similar. Also, now that I'm saying it out loud, that is everything just a joke to you. That's not actually from How to Train Your Dragon. That's actually from Kung Fu Panda. Tigress says that to Po, and then he gets acupunctured, and she's about to whack him in the face. And Manta's like, no, hold on, no, that's not him. I think I hit a facial nerve. It's like, no. So very similar DreamWorks movies from very similar time frame. So I'm glad I caught myself on that. But Astrid, Tigress, sort of similar characters, at least in their first outings. Astrid definitely softens as the movies go on. Tigress not so. She does, but not as much as Astrid does. But I mean, you still understand that's why Astrid is mad, is that she thinks that Hiccup is just a goof, who's not taking anything seriously, and it's why she also kind of rolls her eyes and has this sense of disdain when she's around like Snotlout and the twins as well. So to change it just ever so slightly for the remake and go, it's like, oh yeah, she thinks he's just a spoiled brat. It's like, okay, I like that. That's a decent change. It doesn't really elevate this story arc for me, but it doesn't detract from it either. It's like, it's just slightly different enough to make me go, oh, okay. And it doesn't really mess with anything. So I think that's fine. And there's a couple small little moments like that throughout the movie. However, it is like all these live action remakes. Now this one, it's not egregious in this one, but that does, when you make changes like that, then it does have ripple effects down the line in the story. So, because again, it's one of those, it's done so well in the animated version. And again, it's like I said, Astrid's issue with Hiccup is that she thinks he's just a goof who doesn't care about anything, is not taking anything seriously. So when they find the dragon nest and they realize that the Red Death has been coordinating these raids on Burke, and all the dragons bring back food for the Red Death, and she's trying to go tell Stoic, and Hiccup's telling her no, and she kind of flips out on him just a little bit. It's like, are you serious? We finally find the nest, the thing that Vikings have been searching for since we first settled here, and you want to keep it a secret to save your pet dragon? So she's still having these kind of underneath the surface issues with the dragon. It's like she's way more accepting than she thought she would be, but there's still a couple of this culture clash thing issue going here. And she says, you want to do it just to save your pet dragon? Are you serious? And Hiccup turns to her, stone-faced, pure determination on his face, and says simply, yes. Then the look on Astrid's face is her entire world, perception, her world perception around the way she looks at the world, and specifically Hiccup in the world, changes in an instant, and you can see that all over her face. That's probably like the first little twing of love starting to crop up there, which is pretty obvious, later when she then kisses him on the cheek and then kisses him full on the lips in front of the whole village. And then they proceed to the not date for 3 or 4 years, which is a little weird, but you know what? We'll look past it. So anyway, I love that scene so much, because it does so much for Astrid's character in a very short amount of time. Because like I said, the original previews for the movie, I can remember thinking at the time, well, this looks kind of predictable, seen stuff like this before. And they so could have easily turned Astrid into the bully character. Like Snotlout. Snotlout kind of is the bully character a little bit. He has his redeeming, especially in the show. He ends up with his redeeming qualities in the show. And even in the sequels, he's more just kind of obnoxious, and he's not really. He does loosen up, but he's not really a bully or anything. But Astrid could have so easily just been the bully character, and I kind of thought that's where they were going with her when I first started watching the movie 15 years ago now, which is crazy. Um, but they don't make her a bully. She never really demeans or belittles or talks back to Hiccup in the original. Now she does have that moment in this version where it's like she lays out her reasons for not liking Hiccup, but she's never really that quote unquote mean about it in this version. She more or less just says, these are my issues with her, and it's based on a false perception she has of him. And so it's not really fair, but she doesn't like overly pick on Hiccup or anything, because I do like that in like after getting Stormfly back into her paddock in the ring after the "ooh, love on the battlefield" moment, which I don't think they said that line in this version anyway. I do like in the new version how she addresses everyone instead of just Hiccup, saying it's like, hey, our parents' war is about to become ours. You guys need to focus up and figure out what side you're on. I do really like that she addressed everyone this time instead of just Hiccup, because the others were just as goof offs really, and like not. I mean, they were taking it seriously, but their skill level is just so inept compared to Astrid, who's doing like all the barrel rolls and tuck and rolls and all those other things. So that was kind of a nice change, but so that moment in the original really does a lot for her character, and I love it. And it really does show that it's like, yeah, she's not the bully character. Like, she doesn't particularly care for Hiccup, but she had her reasons for, and once she actually slowed down and paid attention to Hiccup and saw what was under the surface, then that perception is obliterated and she sees him in a whole new light. And I kind of feel like in the remake, that moment doesn't hit as hard. And it's because of the way it's delivered. Because like I said, ripple effects. Where she lays out her case in the movie for why she doesn't like Hiccup, because she thinks that he's just a snobby chief's son who thinks the world's been handed to him on a silver platter. When couldn't be further from the truth, but obviously she doesn't understand that yet. But then later on, they have the same exchange about just wanting to save the dragon. And it's like, are you serious? And then Hiccup says yes. And then that moment there's not as much recognition and change in facial in terms of Astrid's face doesn't really do enough to really sell that moment. And also it feels off because again, the setup's just ever so slightly different. It's very, very similar, but it's ever so slightly different at the same time, to where that doesn't really, it's like, it's not necessarily, well, it's not so much that he's a goof in this one, and that's why she doesn't like him and thinks he just doesn't care about anything. In terms of that side, it's that she thinks he's entitled and pompous about it. So that's an area where I would have added a little bit of extra dialogue. It's like maybe instead of like maybe have Astrid's reaction and question be the same thing, and just be, "Are you serious?" And have Hiccup kind of belatedly answer her about, like earlier in the movie in the Great Hall, she lays out her case for why she doesn't like Hiccup. And now maybe in, a half a paragraph, Hiccup can then blow up kind of back at her and showcase, hey, no, everything I do is for the good of the village. I try to do these things for the good of the village. It's like, yes, I'm a screw up. It doesn't always go right. I don't always think things through, but don't think, but I'm not, it's like, I'm trying to think out the long game here for the first time. And I'm trying to think 3 steps ahead so no one dies, because I don't want everyone just going to that island to get eaten by the giant dragon. So it's so maybe that moment in the remake needed a little tweaking and a little bit more expanding on, just because, well, you've changed the setup. And that's kind of I think that's just going to be an issue with all of these remakes, every single one of them. No matter what they change or don't change, it's like you change, you move a pebble, and then there's ripple effects, and there's just going to be these changes. This is not a huge catastrophe of it totally throws off the narrative of the movie, like some of the other live action remakes that are out there. But it does. But that moment just doesn't hit as hard in this version. But that's really kind of the biggest complaint I have about the movie, is just like, oh, that moment did not hit as hard. Everything else, though, I think works, which I'm shocked by. Because I think overall they did a good job casting the characters, and now there are moments, and again, these are areas I was like, okay, let's change this. Is that what's his name? Mason Thames. I don't know how to say his last name. I think he does a good job as Hiccup, but he's a different Hiccup to Jay Baruchel, which isn't a bad thing. I think because Jay Baruchel's Hiccup is so, and the way his voice is, the actor's voices in general, it's so distinct, and the way Hiccup is in the original material, the original materials, the books, you know what I mean? It's like in the franchise, the movies and stuff. It's that he's so a specific way that obviously you need to find the core of what makes Hiccup work as a character, but you can't do all the same things that Jay Baruchel's Hiccup does. So like kind of the snarky, bordering on snarky and self-deprecating humor in the movie, that a lot of these comebacks that Hiccup has towards other people, I don't think works as well in this version as it does in the original. So there's some lines that I think hit really hard and are really funny and work really well in the original, but in this version, it's just kind of like, you're repeating the line to repeat the line. It doesn't have the same weight because of the way it's being delivered, because this Hiccup just inherently feels a little different. Again, I think Mason Thames, or whatever his name is, I think he did a good job, but it is a different Hiccup. So they needed to change some of the lines up to reflect that he is a different Hiccup. I really saw this Hiccup. I really saw a lot less snark in, just in the way that he carried himself. Because original Hiccup, the snark was almost like a defense mechanism, where it's like he's snarky at times and fights back because that's the only way he can fight back. All these Vikings are so much larger than him, are so much stronger than him. It's like, again, it goes back to Gobber going. It's like, you can't swing a hammer, you can't throw an axe, you can't even you can't lift a hammer, you can't swing an axe, you can't even throw one of these, and holds up the bolos. So the only way he really can fight back when he's being picked on or targeted is with snark, and it's a lot of times it's a kind of almost self-deprecating snark that some of the others don't even pick up on all the time. So, and the way Jay Baruchel delivers those lines, really, he sells that really well, because he just knows how to tap into what is needed to sell those lines. But Mason Thames, kind of, when it comes to those lines, they just sound kind of sad. Like immediately after the opening of the movie with the village attack, where Stoic's going, it's like, you're always screwing up, and it's like, and I've got, winter's almost here, and I've got a village to feed, and Hiccup's like, between you and me, the village could do with a little less feeding, if you know what I mean. And then like the Vikings look at each other like, oh, we're not that fat. It's kind of a cute, humorous moment in the original. In this version, and it helps endear us to Hiccup as a character, because he is so, it's like it's his worldview. It's like he is so much smaller and scrawnier than all of the other Vikings we see in the movie, aside from the kids. And even then, Fish Legs is still Fish Legs. That's like, yeah, the original, it makes sense that he'd kind of be maybe poking at their weight a little bit. It's like, it's because, again, that's like his one kind of, I'm trying to crawl out from underneath this mountain of oppression that has kind of been thrown on top of me by being a Hiccup and not being as strong as everyone else, and trying to do things my own way. And the thing is that it's part of what I love about the story, is that everyone tells him, especially Gobber. It mainly comes from Gobber, is that Gobber tells Hiccup time and time again, You just need to be yourself. But then he's hypocritical, and then he and everyone else then are constantly trying to relay to Hiccup to not be yourself. You need to be like us, be the big burly Vikings. But that's not Hiccup. So every time Hiccup tries to be the big burly Viking, it doesn't end well, and everyone gets mad at him. But then when he does try to be himself, it doesn't go well because no one believes in him, and then everyone gets mad at him. So there really is no winning in Hiccup's shoes. So you understand why he's kind of the snarky attitude. But then, and the again with the way that Jay Baruchel delivers those lines, it really works. But then Mason Thames, it's like the this village could do with a little less speeding, if you know what I mean. That a lot of those snarky, sarcastic lines just don't work with the way he says it unless he's being self-deprecating. Because like when he's like in the forge with Gobber, when they're going back and forth, it's like, oh, you're playing a dangerous game, keeping all this raw Vikingness contained. There will be consequences. It's like that works in the original because you can hear the sarcasm in Hiccup's voice, and Gobber gives the sarcasm right back, and they're playing this back and forth game with one another. But the way Mason Thames almost does it, it sounds like someone trying to be sarcastic, but they don't exactly know what sarcasm is, and so it sounds a little bit more genuine. So it just kind of comes off as sad. Those moments are kind of few and far between. It's like I said, they repeat lines and stuff. But as the movie goes on, I think he really does come into his own as Hiccup, as this version of Hiccup, and I think that it's just a switch. It's a switch where they're just kind of focusing on different aspects of the character, which is okay. Because in the original, you get the sense of Hiccup's ingenuity, and he really is clever. But that's kind of more of a side thing, and they focus more on a little bit more on the snark and the aloneness that it's like those are the two major things that they focus on with Hiccup, is that he's alone and he's snarky when he does have to interact with people a lot. In the remake, like they try to focus on the snark at first and it doesn't really work. But then the way that Mason kind of carries himself, like Hiccup's still awkward in the original, especially when he's starting to become popular and everything. He's like, I forgot my axe back at the ring. I'll see you guys tomorrow, and all that stuff. But he seems just kind of more that the way that's portrayed, it seems like he's more just antsy to get to Toothless. Like he doesn't care about the people. He just wants to get to Toothless and hang out with Toothless. While that's still present in the remake, that scene specifically, I read that more as not only does Hiccup want to get around all the people and get to Toothless, but he's also like really uncomfortable around them. And it's not just because he's keeping the secret, but it's because he's not used to the attention. It's more that he's just not used to the attention, so he's really awkward around them. And it's that part of Hiccup that it's like, okay, you captured that perfectly. Someone that's an outcast like that, they would feel like that. And so Mason Thames did a great job with that side of the character. And then like when he so yeah, I think he did a good job as Hiccup. It's focusing on different parts of the character, just ever so slightly than the original, and I think that works. So I will be interested to see how they carry that forward to the next one. Gerard Butler back as Stoic, I thought was great. I think he did a great job in this version. And it is especially strange hearing like some of the same lines just read differently this time. Like it's like, Odin, I almost lost faith. You didn't make it easy, but we finally have something to talk about. Thor Almighty, and hearing like that exact line again from the same actor, but it being slightly different. Little weird. Nick Frost as Gobber, I liked a lot. The one thing about him though, I could have done without the giant beard mustache thing. I think that's something they could have trimmed down. Otherwise, the look was good. I think that was just too distractingly cartoony, and they really could have scaled back on that. And it's like, yeah, have it dangle a little bit, but I mean, it was like full length like it was in the original, and it's like you didn't need to do that. It didn't need to be that long. Nico Parker as Astrid, perfect. Other than I don't think she showed enough emotion on her face when she kind of re reevaluates Hiccup. Other than that scene, I think she did a really good job. She had the physicality, she had the authoritative command over the other teens. It's like you could tell that they really kind of ate out of her hands. Like she was the alpha, the alpha teen among them. Um, she did a really good job. Little kind of wish she was blonde just a teensy bit because I think that is so central to her look as a character. She's got the accent, she's blonde, but that's really not an issue because I think she did a really good job. Now I will say I'm annoyed about this. And it's not an issue with the movie, it's an issue with myself, is that I missed the romantic flight scene because I had to go to the bathroom. I had to go to the bathroom bad. And I couldn't hold it anymore. It's like, okay, it's either sit here and watch romantic flight or something very unromantic is about to happen to this movie theater seat. So I got up and I left and went to the bathroom as fast as I possibly could and came back. And by the time I came back, they were flying into the dragon's nest. I'm like, yeah, I missed romantic flight. That's really annoying. So like the whole like the kidnapping her, like the last thing I got was Astrid running through the forest right before Toothless snatches her up. And then I missed all of the jumping in and out of the water. Thank you for nothing, you useless reptile, and the romantic flight. I unfortunately missed all that, which I'm upset about, but what are you going to do? So yeah. So I will say I am missing a little part of her performance there. So maybe so I'm pretty high on my evaluation of her as Astrid already, but maybe I would be able to hand wave maybe she didn't show enough motion in her face during the one scene where she reevaluates Hiccup, but she was perfect during romantic flights. So maybe I'd be like that, but that's just putting that caveat out there. The other teens I thought were really great. Snotlout was... I remember when they announced Snotlout and I saw like a picture of him just in normal people clothes. I was kind of like, is this really Snotlout? But then I saw him in costume from like the set leak photos and stuff. I'm like, oh, that is Snotlout to a T. He's not as beefy as he needs to be, but the little smug look on his face and the way he's carrying himself, this guy is perfect. Awesome. The fish legs, again, great. I can't remember the name of the kid who they got to play him, but he was in Deadpool 2. He was in Hunt for the Wilder People. Great. And then the twins. The twins were perfect because they managed to do a double whammy of capturing both the attitudes of the characters and making them really feel like the characters while also getting the visual there. At least with Tough Nut, where it's like Tough Nut was like my dad actually, because I went and saw the movie with my parents, which I was kind of surprised, but I didn't think they would care. I was like, I'm going to go see How to Train Your Dragon. They're like, can we come? It's like, okay. I mean, it's like my dad had seen the original, but like my mom hadn't like, she knew I liked, said, oh, he likes those animated dragon movies, but she knew nothing about the story or anything. And she's like, well, is there like witchcraft and stuff I won't like it? I'm like, no, it's just the only mythological element is just the giant flying lizards. She's like, okay, that works. So it's like, okay, I guess we'll all three go see How to Train Your Dragon. So we got out of the movie. My dad was like, the casting for the boy twin was like scary. I'm like, I know. It's like, that was so Tough Nut. It was Tough Nut to a T. Now, obviously, Rough Nut looked a little different, but they still kind of kept the essence of her character, and they worked that into the character of the twins, of them thinking they look identical. When they don't, it's like, that is 100% what the twins would do if that was the way they were in the animated version. So I don't have an issue with the casting there. I think all of the teens were lovely. It's like they all did such a great job. The CG was really good. Toothless, it's like I remember seeing some discourse online about the design of Toothless and them people going, it feels too animated. It feels too much like the animated version. He doesn't look enough like a giant lizard, like a real creature, when they had done all of that work to the other dragons. So like Meatlug, Stormfly, Hookfang, like they all, Barf and Belch, especially, I think got a major overhaul because they had to make the necks really thick to make it look like the twins are actually, because in a cartoon it works. Those necks are so small in the Zibbleback that it works. But in live action, so yeah, no, they needed to do work on Barf and Belch, and they did a good job there. But Toothless didn't really get any major changes. I think they maybe redesigned the wings ever so slightly. But other than that, Toothless was pretty much 1-to-1 from his animated counterpart. And I was on the fence about that because I'm like, yeah, I could see that being too distracting and it not working. But I think it worked well because and I think this is the benefit of getting a animator to direct your live action feature, which, especially considering it's an adaptation of an animated film and it's got all these CG creatures in it. Because I think the same is true of Bumblebee from Transformers, the movie. Because Travis Knight was this stop motion animator and he had made a couple movies for Leica, and then Paramount got him to direct this live action movie. And the bots in that movie are the most visually expressive and emote the most out of all the Transformers movies. And it's because you have an animator that's used to working with those really little details with animation, and you've got these big CG creatures, so he knows what to ask the animators for. And I think that's probably why Dean and the design team went round and round in circles trying to redesign Toothless and went, we can't, because we need him to show all these expressions, and we can't get that if he looks too much like a flying lizard. He still needs to kind of have a little bit of that cartoonish look to him from the original, but just like, modified to look live action. So it's like, so them not really touching Toothless's design much, I'm okay with. I think it worked because I was getting, and initially I was kind of getting choked up at the movie, like just when the score kicked in, because I'm like, I've been Pavlov's dogged by the score. So hearing the opening horns to "This Is Burke" at the beginning of the movie when the opening credits are going, I was going, oh no, I'm already crying and it's just the opening note. And then like kind of speaking along with the movie, it's like, this is Burke. Some places have problems with mice or mosquitoes, so we have dragons, and it's like I was kind of sitting there misty-eyed. I'm like, okay, the music's getting me. I need to actually try to tune up the music just a little bit, because it's like the whole rest of this movie could be a disaster, but I'm going to be a wreck just because the music's still going to be amazing. So but no, I think it did a good job of reintroducing the characters and still getting those heartfelt emotions in there, and it all just worked. And it all kind of mainly worked because they stuck to the original story and didn't make too many changes, which again is weird coming from me, because I'm the type of person that goes, why do we need these live action remakes if they're just going to stick so close to the original? Let's do something different and new with it, and make and give it a reason for really existing, like, having some more artistic merit there. And like the example I brought up earlier, Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland, that was so different. Okay, there's a reason for existing just because it's different. So my thing when they announced this, I was kind of like, and Dean was on board and everything. I was kind of like, well, I'm curious. I was like, what could be something that they could do to really differentiate? And so I was a little disappointed when I saw that it was rated PG, because I did kind of think to myself, and ultimately I think this was the right call, but I did kind of think to myself, well, what is a way that the live action remake could really differentiate itself? And I really thought, well, what if they went like up the violence on it? Because these are giant fire breathing creatures. There are multiple characters in this franchise that are missing limbs because of said giant fire breathing creatures with giant teeth. What if they got a little gory with it? Not overly, obviously. It doesn't need to be R-rated, but like a light PG-13 where you show some blood, you show some scratches. It's like maybe you show people holding bloody stumps. It's like people with some bad burns. I was like, you see, they're in the makeup. I think with Stoic especially, you do see there's some spots on his face that's like, clearly you were burned there in the past. It's like you've had run-ins with dragons and you've gotten burned, and that has healed, and it doesn't look great. But so you see that on a couple of the Vikings, and they're dirty and sooty and all that stuff. So that worked. But I was kind of like, it's like, yeah, let's maybe see, like in the opening sequence, let's maybe see some people like running out of their houses on fire, and like and like that being mentioned at some point. It's like, well, the whatever family didn't make it out of their hut in time, and so it's like, the wife survived, but she's terribly burned, and the husband's dead, and so we're preparing the burial. It's like mentioning things like that, just being a little bit more visceral with the violence. It's like that was something I was kind of thinking. It's like, okay, that would really, I think, merit a live action remake because it would do things that you couldn't. That's actually something I don't think you could get away with the animated version because it is a quote unquote cartoon for kids. Even though the storytelling in it is oftentimes much more mature than quote unquote R-rated adult movies. So it's like, so that was kind of something I was thinking. It's like, okay, maybe you could do that and get more violent and visceral with it, just a little bit to really sell that home, and the live action would really help emphasize that, because the whole live action versus animation thing is really something I've been struggling with all of these internally in my own mind with all these remakes. And then I kind of even feel like it's infected Star Wars, because I brought up Dave Filoni as an example earlier. And I'm kind of like, and I still, as much as I like most of the Disney Plus projects that come out for Star Wars, obviously Andor is amazing, Skeleton Crew's great. There's still parts of Ahsoka that don't work for me because I'm so used to that being an animated character, and it's so short. It's only like 30 to 40-minute episodes, and that's your season. I'm just kind of like, why can't? It's like I feel like Dave Filoni's almost been kind of like driven. No, this is a terrible analogy. It's like almost like driven to the dark side. It's like he's been too wowed by the prospect of doing live action, and it's new and shiny and all that stuff. It's like, and I don't think that's actually true, because he's still helping produce a lot of the animated stuff, like Tales of the insert Jedi Underworld Sith or whatever here. He's still in meetings for like the Bad Batch and all that stuff. I'm pretty sure he's still got an active hand in Maul's Shadow Lord, which is upcoming. It's their next animated series, which I'm really looking forward to. But but I still think that his strongest work is in animation. And so like continuing the story of Rebels from animation and making the leap to live action, there's just this weird disconnect for me. So How to Train Your Dragon making the same leap, it's been hard to adjust to, but so saying all that, and going back to kind of at the start of this, I said that, what, actually, I think they kind of have, and if they had to do this, absolutely had to do this, I think they've been making the right choices. And I can't believe I'm saying this. Sticking to the original movie as closely as they did, I think was the right choice for now. Going forward is what I'm going to be really interested to see how it turns out. And I'm kind of maybe hopeful about this. So, like I said, I've loved the trilogy. How to Train Your Dragon, one of my top 3 films. Hidden World, I thought was a really, really good conclusion to the whole thing and that whole story, as sad as it may be. But the second one, I don't really have any major issues with, but there's just parts of it that don't. It's still good. It's still very good. Don't get me wrong, but there's just this feeling of something's off by like 0.5% about that movie, and I think it's Drago for me. I think it's the villain. Like, the villain is just not really that strong. He's probably the weakest villain in the franchise, not physically, obviously, but in terms of impact. I feel like Drago's just kind of a meh villain, because you have villain in the show. You have villains like Krogan and I'm forgetting Alfred Merlin and his character's name. This is annoying. Because Krogan's just a cool name, so I remember that one. Vigo, there it is. I'm like, it's like vaguely Italian. Vigo, yeah. And Vigo, those are some great characters. Those are some great villains. Alvin the Treacherous in the first season before he gets redeemed in the second. Mark Hamill, obviously a great villain performance there. And then I think Grimmel is really good in the Hidden World, but Drago is just kind of meh. It's like they don't really do too much with him. And at the time, I was kind of like, yeah, he's just kind of weak. I don't know why he's this weak. But then as time went by, I think like maybe the art book or something came out, and or it was the behind the scenes stuff on the Blu-ray. I can't remember which, but we kind of got some insight into why Drago is the way he is, not in terms of a character, but from a production storytelling standpoint of why he's the main villain of the movie. Is that he wasn't always, and why he's kind of weak and there's not much to him, is that he wasn't always supposed to be the main villain of the movie. It was really supposed to be Volka, Hiccup's mom. And it's not necessarily that she was supposed to be the villain. It's like yeah, she was going to be the antagonist that they defeated at the end of the movie, but it was going to be this kind of really bittersweet thing, and then she was going to limp away and come back in the third movie, and it would be this, I guess, this mother son fight where it's like neither's wanting to fight, but they're on opposite ends of this of their ideals, and it would have been, you know, a kind of a Return of the Jedi type thing. With if How to Train Your Dragon 2's Empire Strikes Back, then the original version of the Hidden World in that instance would have been Return of the Jedi, and then them probably eventually coming together at the very end and Volka realizing she's wrong. But midway through production on 2, they made a change to no longer go that route. And so, but without enough time left to really do too many major rewrites, Drago just stepped in to be the villain in the third act, but they never really did too much to boost him. I mean, he's responsible for the death of Stoic, and that's huge. But yeah, he still feels kind of meh to me as a villain. And so on the red carpet for the premiere of this movie, this remake, Dean said that, you know, I think someone asked him, someone in the press asked him, it's like, well, what are your plans going forward for the next movie? And he said something along the lines of, there are things we did with the second movie that if I had another shot at it, I would do over and do differently. He said something along the lines of that. So that's kind of got me thinking, and that's kind of intriguing to me because, you know, I've said in live action remakes, I don't like them. Why do them if you're just going to do them the exact same way? And then here I am praising this movie for being so true to the original. But here's why and this is definitely going to be let's put a timer on this and wait and see in another 2 or 3 years when the next movie comes out. Because if the next movie comes out and it is again a shot for shot remake of the second movie and they don't really do anything major to improve upon it, then I'm going to be okay. Why are we doing this other than to just make money? It's like, this is kind of annoying now. But hearing what Dean is saying, I'm kind of hopeful that they will go in not a completely, totally different direction. I think it makes sense to follow similar story beats, but have the first movie of this new live action, I'm assuming, trilogy, have it be like the original live action movie or animated movie to reestablish the world and the characters. But then for the second movie, let's move forward in some different directions. Like, I don't know, maybe Volka could be the villain going forward. Like maybe in the second one, it's like maybe, you know, with years to think about it, because it's been 11 years since 2 came out, which is crazy. It's been like 11 years to the week almost. I think it was like a late June, early July movie. I'm pretty sure How to Train Your Dragon 2 was. So with 11 plus years to think about it, I wonder if Dean could, like, you know, it's like, because I mean, I know how writers think. I'm a writer. I'm constantly thinking of things and thinking about things I've written previously. I'm like, oh, I could have done that instead. It's like the thing I did was still good, but it's like, you know, this could have maybe been a more interesting route, but I got to stop thinking about that because I'll just think myself in circles. Writers do that stuff all the time. So maybe Dean's been thinking about this in circles for 11 years. And maybe now he's like, here's how we make this work. And if we change this, this, and this, so maybe How to Train Your Dragon 2, the live action, will be significantly different to the original, and that would give it artistic meaning and artistic merit to exist, aside from just making money, and it would help chart the live action story in a similar but different direction that makes it and that helps it stand on its own. As we did the animated stuff, and it's good. We made sure to make sure those were good stories, and made sense for those characters. But now we're getting another do at it, and it's live action. It's a different medium. So, we're going to do some different things and take the characters in some different directions that still make sense for the characters. And it won't be a Jumba situation from Lilo and Stitch where it completely betrays the characters, what the character is. But it's still going to, we're still going to do some different things. So I'm kind of intrigued if that's the direction they move in. So yeah, I guess we'll find out. So yeah, I've just talked for an hour about this movie, and I didn't really expect to do that. But it's How to Train Your Dragon. You get me talking about anything I love this much, and I'm just gonna go. It's like that quote from Ant-Man and the Wasp of when you put a quarter in the jukebox, you gotta let the whole song play. So I think that's a great quote. So yeah, good movie despite being very similar to the original. But like I said, this is not a movie that exists in a vacuum. This is and that's been the case from even before the movie came out, because they greenlit the sequel back in April at CinemaCon. So this is never, so it's pretty clear that for a long time this was never going to be a movie in a vacuum. So I'm kind of judging it as the start of something new, and not necessarily in so the fact that it is so close maybe isn't going to be a detriment if this is a new stepping off point, and going forward things will be different. It's like, okay, we're going to reestablish everything, keep it kind of similar, and then like the timelines will branch. So who knows? And I guess looking back, Lilo and Stitch is much in the same route, because part of my review for Lilo and Stitch is it's like, if this is just a single movie, then I understand what they did with Jumba, but I don't necessarily like what they did with Jumba. But if they're going to make a sequel, then this does actually open up some fertile ground for sequel territory that they could actually tell an interesting story with. And it seems like that's probably what they're going to end up doing. It's not like they've called it Lilo and Stitch 2 Jumbo's Redemption or anything, but it's like, I mean, it's right there on a silver platter for you. So there you go. So yeah, it's interesting that Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon, written and directed by the two same guys back in 2002 and 2010, both get live action remakes in the summer of 2025, and then they will both get sequels in the next 2 to 3 years. And so yeah, it's and neither of which of these original live action remakes will exist in a vacuum either. And so it's like it's all franchised out and world building and stuff. So it's like you can't really just judge it as a movie, because it's like, well, how's the future going to shape out? So it's like in 3 years I'm going to have to come back and reevaluate both of these movies, because if How to Train Your Dragon 2 comes out and it's just the second one again, and they don't really do anything to change anything or improve upon it, and it ends at about the same place in the same way without any major changes to do anything different, then I'm going to be like, okay, what are we doing here? It's like, why? It's like Lilo and Stitch 2 is already going to be different, so I don't really have to worry about that. But How to Train Your Dragon 2, time will tell on that one, and then that's going to be the time will tell on this one as well. It's like, okay, well, what are we doing here? Why are we just remaking? It's like you've fallen into the easy money trap. No, don't do it. It's like, dude, but I mean, I liked this one, and I had faith in Dean, so I'll have faith in him to do it again and see what he does, even if it does stick really close to. I mean, just his little comments there on the red carpet about, yeah, I would maybe change some things. It's like, okay. It's like he's open to redoing his own work in different ways. So it's and another reason for keeping this one as close to the original as possible is that, of course, he co-directed the original with Chris Sanders. It's like it wasn't just it wasn't a solo him project like 2 and 3 were. It's like he co-directed it with Chris Sanders. So it's like, so I wonder if if his thought process on this one was like, well, I can't really change this, or this, because that would stray too far of these really big elements that Chris was involved in, and that really helped set the tone and the heart for this story. But going forward for 2 and 3, he solo wrote those, I'm pretty sure. So I know he didn't write them with Chris Sanders. I can't remember if anyone else helped write those or not. Cressida Cowell, since she was the author of the book, she may have had some input, but pretty sure he solo wrote those. So sometimes we are our own biggest critics. So maybe going forward for 2 and 3, he's going to go, you know what, let's make some significant changes to 2 and 3 and like change things up significantly in ways that make sense for the characters, but then give you a different story that's still a satisfying journey. So yeah, that is How to Train Your Dragon, the live action remake. Yeah, it was good. I mean, if the animated movie and this one are hanging off of a bridge, and I can only save one, I'm saving the animated movie. But it wasn't awful. I didn't want to put bleach in my eyes afterward because of how bad they butchered it. So they did a pretty good job. So because like the production design was good, and I loved the design of all the dragons. I thought the dragons were designed really well. One big improvement over the original is the design of the Red Death. The Red Death is actually really red this time. It's like it's a big red and black scary gecko looking dragon with horns, and that was really awesome looking. It's not to say that the design for the original Red Death was necessarily bad, but this version was better. This version was better, and like the redness was more obvious because like the original Red Death was more blue with some red markings here or there. So it's like it should have actually more been Blue Death and not the Red Death, but I digress. So anyway, I'm going to shut up now. So if you watched all the way through, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. And another one of these movie reviews will be out soon. Jurassic World Rebirth, because like I said, the summer movie season is not over yet. So yeah, keep an eye out for that review very, very soon, in the next week or two. So thank you for watching. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that great stuff. Remember to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Those links are in the description below, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.